Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday webinar. I can't believe how quickly the weeks are going by, but we have an amazing guest speaker for you today, and we're going to speak to Matt. But first of all, let's listen to his audio. He very kindly recorded his thoughts on studying law at university, and I think a lot of students will somehow resonate with Matt's views. So here we go. We're going to listen to Matt. We've got a video, and let's just play Matt's video. Why won't it play? Okay, share. Okay.
Matt Ilunga, and I'm a trainee solicitor at Irwin Mitchell. One thing I didn't like about my studies was studying. Most of my studies were spent me going to lectures, not really engaging, and finding a lot of my legal studies quite boring. In terms of changing this one thing, I kind of struggled through university and muddled through it, almost fell out of love of the law, and went down a different career path. Decided actually I did quite enjoy maybe giving law a shot, risked it and sort of went into a law firm eventually, and I've realised I actually really enjoyed the research elements of law. I enjoyed learning about the background and case law and reading the civil procedure rules and the white book, and those are the kind of things I really enjoyed and added value to different colleagues in my team. In terms of the impact, it had a massive impact. I think it was really turning point, because now actually I enjoy the fact that as I'm quite junior in the team, I have a hybrid kind of role where actually most of my work is helping on cases, but sometimes I might get a question or a request to do some research, which is certainly the highlight of my week. My advice in one word is really to persevere. It's so important to really just keep going. If it is something you enjoy, but just haven't found exactly what you enjoy out of it, that's really, it just sometimes might take some time. It's certainly taken me over the span of around 10 years to find out that I actually really enjoy the research part of it in a sort of more practical sense, rather than the very academic sense at university. Thank you.
Wow, great. That was wonderful to hear, Matt. Now, let's see if we can actually speak to Matt. Here he is. Matt.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thank you, Matt. That was an interesting audio, because a lot of law students, I think, believe that they've got to love studying law at law school in order for them to enjoy their career. And it's very interesting that you didn't have that experience. So when you were at law school, you would go to these boring lectures. What did you think? Did you think of abandoning law and doing a different subject? What kept you going?
Yeah, I think I made the biggest mistake of studying law, and I really regretted my decision, and I really disengaged from it. So much so that I was working more in my part-time job. I wasn't necessarily engaged in the lectures, was still attending seminars, which actually, to contrast the lectures, seminars were slightly more enjoyable, because it was you were kept awake essentially, because you asked questions, you were kind of analyzing different topics, and I think that was a good part of it. But most of it was lectures, and it was. I mean, I started my studies about 10 years ago, just a little bit over actually, and not all the lectures were recorded. So we had to attend the lectures in order to get the notes, and otherwise you'd have to rely on your other sort of colleagues. So it was a case of having to go to lectures and read the books, and yeah, it was incredibly boring. And I don't want to say that, but unfortunately, that's the way it was.
What did you actually find boring about law lectures? Was it just droll the way it was delivered? Was it the topic? What was so boring about it? Or not?
I think it's totally is the first thing is the volume. So to get a decent grade in university, you have to really learn a lot of volume, a lot of cases. Occasionally, I was thinking about this earlier today. You might hear the Donahue and Stevenson case, and you might hear the Crown and Brown, and you might be like, "Oh, that sounds interesting."
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, it's case law after case law. It's carbolic smoke ball company. It's all these different cases. Only
Yeah.
some of them will stick, but the
Yeah.
rest of them are just other cases. So I think for me, I was overwhelmed by the volume, and the volume, the sort of the topics weren't engaging enough to be like, actually, that's interesting. It was just, and also now going into practice to sort of jump ahead a little bit, we don't
Mhm.
practice like that. We don't walk around the office quoting Donahue and Stevenson when we're talking about negligence, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that's a problem, that the practical application of law is completely different to the academic study. And clearly, you need the foundation subjects to understand general principles of law, but you probably don't need to swallow as many cases as
Yeah.
you do in academia. So you find yourself at university studying law, you like the seminars, but the lectures are boring. Do you think that at that stage there was a real risk that you could have just dropped out and not completed your law degree?
I think there was, and actually the real turning point was I actually missed the lecture, but then I was told by some friends that people came in to talk about Erasmus, and Erasmus was the best year of my 4-year degree. I studied in Liège, Belgium, which was the French part of Belgium. You have to excuse me, my dog is snoring on my lap. So I specifically requested to go to a country where I'd have to speak French because French was kind of in my background.
Mhm.
So I was studying law in French. Now, this seems very bizarre for someone who said his law studies were incredibly boring, but there was something about it that changed it for me because actually I had to learn French very quickly, like an advanced level. I was going to
So
this
let's
master
just
level.
stop. You weren't fluent in French when
No,
you
I
got
wasn't. No, no, not at all.
Erasmus placement. Oh my
No,
gosh,
no.
that's brave. That is
So over
definitely
summer,
pushing your boundaries
yeah.
and putting yourself in an uncomfortable position.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's exactly what I needed. I needed a bit of a challenge because it's all well and good going to lectures and pretending to take things in, making notes, which you can't read because you probably fell asleep halfway through. What I needed was the challenge in order to be like, actually, this is completely different. I'm having to learn French as well on the side. I'm having to experience a different culture. It completely changed my mind in terms of how I approach studying. And it showed I had the intellectual capability in order to do it. And I think that's what I was worried about, that I wasn't clever enough to understand what was going on. And that was concerning because going into a career in law, you feel you have to be intelligent. And that proved to me and it gave me the confidence to be like, actually, this is a very sort of difficult thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
but I can actually still do it.
Mm-hmm. And it would have been so easy at that stage to have maybe thrown the towel in and do something else. And that's really interesting because a lot of students, rather than challenge themselves, where they're feeling overwhelmed by something, it's almost like there's a retreat, and they don't want to push themselves, they don't want to test themselves. And that is just such a wonderful example of that. If you push yourself, you find out wonderful things about your intelligence, about your experience, about what you can cope with. And if you retreat back and think, okay, I can't cope with this, you're never going to know how brilliant you are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the issue is that as well. And I think there was a real chance, but I really wanted to be a lawyer. That was the main driving force. And I think in my audio clip, I said that I actually fell out of love with law. I finished my degree and decided to be a recruiter for about 9 months, and then I decided actually there's still in the background that I want to be a lawyer because I've seen it on TV, I've read about it, I've sort of understood kind of what lawyer does, and that's exactly what I want to do. And I kind of just took the risk. I did the LPC and then went into practice, realized actually this wasn't exactly what a law firm I had expected in my mind. There wasn't law libraries around, but I still wanted to do it. And I think it was the best decision I made to also take a step back from it. So I think it's a case of not necessarily dropping out, but it might be just to take a step back, change the environment a bit, and then you might understand a lot more about what's going on.
That's so important. I think sometimes when you're not sure about what you want to do, taking a slightly different tack, slightly different route makes you really begin to understand, actually, this is not the path I want to be on. I want to be on that path, because there's a little voice in the back of my head telling me, no, this is the path that you should be on. So that is, really powerful. So at this stage where you do your work experience with Erasmus, and then suddenly, you take some time away, you decide, okay, I want to get back into the legal profession. I'm going to do the LPC. At the time that you did your LPC, did you have a training contract?
No, I didn't. I took a bit of a risk there as well. I think it was the best decision at the time. But I think I have different mentees at different stages, and they ask me the same question. And I always say that I would have probably, if I was in the current situation at the moment with the pandemic and all these things, and it being even more difficult to get a training contract, I wouldn't have done it. I think I would have went a different route, because essentially the LPC was extension of my degree. It wasn't fully practical, even though the clues in the name. It wasn't at all. And what I'm doing in my actual job, day-to-day job, is completely different to what I learned in the LPC.
I had the same feeling when I was doing my law course, because my background is in politics. I did a politics degree, I did a conversion course, and then I did the solicitor's exams. And there was this overwhelming feeling that it was really boring. We just had stacks of information to memorize, and really felt like it wasn't a test of my intelligence. It was a test of my memory, which was a bit insulting because I'd already got my degree. But the thing that kept me going through all of this boredom and frustration at the volume of work was the fact that there was no way around this. You had to have this qualification in order to get to the goal that you wanted to get to. So in order to qualify, you've got to do the LPC or the SQE eventually. So that for me was just, just get your head down, do it because you need to do it. What drove you through the LPC?
Well, I think it's a bit tough to say what drove me through the LPC, only because I think it was the commitment financially you'd have to make anyway to do the LPC. That kind of drives you forward. And it was just a desire to be a solicitor. I suppose that was the driving force throughout the whole period, because it took me about a year and a half to get a training contract. So after doing legal assistant jobs, paralegal jobs, just making loads of applications, and it was a risky move because I didn't get the best grades at A level or my degree, unsurprisingly. So it was a lot more difficult for me, I think. So what drove me was, I say this to my mentees all the time, it was my 10 reasons. So I wrote a list when I was in Belgium, actually. I wrote a list of 10 reasons why I want to be a solicitor. And that has always been at the core of everything that I do in terms of the work I applied for, the work that I did. That was always the bigger picture. So now I'm in my trainee role. I kind of forgotten what my 10 reasons were, but it was my driving force to get me to this point.
It's time to write a new list, Matt. 10
exactly.
reasons why you want to be a partner in the law firm that you work with. So, okay, so let's think about students in this situation now. You've got a pandemic, you want to be a solicitor, there are lots of financial implications to studying law. Perseverance sometimes to students who were struggling, that they just can't see the long-term vision. It's about the here and now. What would you say to a student who was in the position of struggling at this stage with whether or not they should continue to carry on in the profession, not really enjoying their academic course, thinking they want to be a solicitor, but just thinking, the battle lines of qualifying are getting higher and higher. Things are so competitive at the moment.
I think there are two things I would say to that. The first thing is to get a mentor. So speak to someone in the industry who has probably gone through the same thing, because actually the lawyers that I speak to didn't really enjoy their studies. What they enjoyed was the idea of practicing it. And also secondly is looking after your mental health, because studying law is a tough subject.
Yeah.
It is really difficult to do it and do it well as well, because I've seen people really study, really practice, really work on their mooting, all these different skills you have to do. So actually, sometimes taking a step back and a break from it is really important. So I wasn't necessarily engaged in my studies, but whenever it came to exams, I studied, but I also made sure I took breaks. So I always think about my friend at the time who was doing all-nighters, using energy drinks, probably using certain sort of caffeine pills as well, and slept during the exam. So what I did was I made sure I had good exam hygiene, had a sort of banana before the exam, and had a good night's sleep. And I was able to retain a little, but as much as I could, because I was in the best environment mentally. So that's the two key things I'd probably say.
Yeah, I mean, I so agree with that, Matt. I think extreme pressure sometimes can lead people to doing extreme things. And I try to tell my students, you know, qualifying, it's a long distant marathon. It's not a sprint. And if you don't take breaks, if you don't eat well, if you don't exercise, if you don't have fun and talk to your friends and family, and just think that you're going to study for 9 or 12 months, it doesn't work like that. You need to sustain yourself during the whole period. And even in exam periods, you still have to give yourself a break and just switch off occasionally and not think about the exams and do something else, so that when you do go through the exams, you are actually in the best state of mind that you can be.
Just on that, sorry, Suzanne, I just want to add that I'm pretty sure the average age for qualification is 28. But if you asked your students what the average age of qualification was, they'd probably say 21, which is completely false.
Yeah. I think there's this sort of myth out there that everyone is perfect. Everyone else is perfect. Everyone else is getting brilliant grades. Everyone else understands everything. And that maybe you're the only person that's struggling. Maybe you're the only person who has to work hard in order to get the grades, and that you're the only person who has to apply more than everybody else to get a training contract. And it is only when you talk to people in the profession and you understand the paths that they have taken in order to qualify, that you realise that it's not a straightforward, smooth ascent as many students think.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's been a lot of bumps and hurdles along the way. I mean, the red herring was becoming a recruiter straight after doing my degree, and that was very much a strange choice, but I ticked a lot of boxes. So one of my reasons or things I wanted to do in my career is work in the city of London, where I'm originally from, work in exactly the city mile, wear a suit every day, have a 9 to 5, work in an office, and I ticked all those things with recruitment, but there's still something missing. So I think really, actually,
were valuable. Working in an office in the city, of valuable skills,
you
know, client contact, those soft skills that we talk about all the time. It doesn't matter what you do. You could be working in a shop, as long as there's sort of customer facing soft skills being developed, it's really important. And, you know, they can help you a lot in the legal profession.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think back to my experience working at Greg's and other places really helped me with my customer service skills.
Okay. So perseverance is a quality that a lot of students may not have right now. But I love the fact that you've told us that, you know, you've not had a straight path into getting into the legal profession, and that you're very positive now about your experience in the profession. So maybe we just turn a little bit to your current experience in the legal profession and how it contrasts with that sort of academic stage. What is it like working as a trainee solicitor in a really large law firm?
So for me, I had experience as a paralegal handling files. As soon as I stepped into Mitchell, I was going from day one of my legal career. In terms of handling files, it was great experience, but really I was trained to sort of do it in a particular way. And also I was given responsibility on cases, but I wasn't given the total responsibility to handle cases. And that was a really good position to be in, because what you have the ability to do is train and learn and actually do things the correct and proper way. So whenever I was given a task, what I'll do is I'll examine the task. Is this in my wheelhouse? Is this something I can do? And then I'd also do some research, which is something I hated doing, but I'd do some research to make sure I was doing it right. So if, for example, I was given a task of drafting a claim form, I'd have a look at different examples. I'll see what the CPR rules are on claim forms, see what the service rules are, which is stuff you never learn in degree. You might touch on it in your LPC, but it's very much done in a very different way to what it would be done in practice. So those are the things that I'm doing, and that's how it kind of relates. And I have that process now. I do a task. If I understand it, I don't. I ask more questions. I do some research. And that's kind of how my training contract has gone. And I've learned a lot from it.
And that's the best type of training, because ultimately, I think there's this concept that students have sometimes that once they've done their professional exams, they're going to go into a law firm and they'll be flying from day one. And one of the things that's really important, I think, as a trainee in any field that you work in, is to know what you can do, what's outside your area of competence, and ask for help, because you are training. And this process of changing, adapting, developing your knowledge is really important, rather than going in thinking, I must do all of this, I must be perfect, I can't ask questions because people will think I'm stupid. The whole point of being someone junior in a profession is that there's this development and incremental experience that you're gaining from doing the job.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just thinking there that, don't get me wrong, I do have certain regrets and wishes that I had in terms of skills. So one of my tasks is I might go to a hearing or a conference with counsel and I have to take notes. Now, thinking back, actually, where was the position where I had to sit hours upon hours on end writing notes? And it was my degree. Now, if I worked harder in my degree, I might be better at writing notes, because I'd be able to read it as well. So something is a skill that I've had to learn later on. So the whole point of this talk isn't for me to say just completely relax and take a back seat from your study. It's the opposite. It's to try and see or imagine, if you need perspective, to think about what the practical reasons. So whenever I sort of speak to mentees before the interviews, I think I challenge them to ask, why are they asking me that question? Then answer it. So in terms of your degree, why am I having to sit here and write loads of notes and remember all these cases? It's not necessarily because you need to remember this specific case. It might just be because you need to remember certain things about your client's case.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
would be really handy at trial. So you're sitting in the back of a trial, counsel asks you a question. Oh, how did the accident circumstances happen? I remember it.
Yeah. It's the skills that you're going to need for your future career, and you'll just build on those skills. And like your ability to analyze facts, retain information, and just be able to sieve out the important stuff in the volume of information that you'll take in is really important. And perhaps as academics, we don't make the connection between the academic and the practice, and that's probably a shame. But I think it's really interesting and a great testament that you have persevered and that you've kept going, and that you're now doing your dream job with a really good firm. So, Matt, I'd like to thank you for spending your time talking to us. It's been absolutely wonderful. And I hope it motivates and keeps other law students who may at this stage in their career be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Exams are coming up. They're questioning whether actually law is the right subject for them. Think about the long picture and remember what Matt's had to say, perseverance. Matt, last word to you.
Well, I just want to say very best of luck. It is a tough, long road, but eventually it'll be worth it. If you have a list of those 10 reasons, so if I can offer a challenge to anyone here, have a list of 10 reasons why you want to be a solicitor or a barrister or work in a legal profession. If you can't come up with 10, do some real soul searching. But if you can't, maybe potentially you need to consider the different paths that are available for you. But yeah, very best of luck to everyone listening.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for giving us your time. Matt, thank you very much for spending your time with us and giving us some really good ideas and insight into the legal profession. And all those students out there, persevere and go away now and write your 10 reasons as to why you want to be in the legal profession. And hopefully in a year or two, you'll be taking it out in your dream job. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. Have a great time. We'll see you next week for Wednesday webinar. Bye, everybody.